Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday. My name is Katie Gideon, and I will be your on camera facilitator. I am dialing in from a rather sunny and quite pleasant Edinburgh, Scotland. And I am really excited to tackle these pages in the journal. It has been a while since I have been able to attend, let alone host a kind of journal prompt focused social. So I am super excited to do that. It's been a minute. But then also excited that I have my co-facilitator, Maya, who is in Colorado, who will be joining us in the chat. She is going to be fantastic to kind of include in this. We noticed that a lot of these letters we've tackled in the past. Maya is usually in the facilitator spot, and I'm usually your stage manager. But it's a great combination to tackle some of these. Not only is the theme this month a little bit on the kind of deeper and what I would consider a delicate balance, but I feel like the letters are always definitely a little bit tricky, a little bit tough, and definitely a little bit more vulnerable than some of the other prompts. But we are absolutely thrilled that we are setting aside time today to do that. So as always, if you want to share in the chat, make sure that it is set to everyone so that everyone can see it. If it's just a host and panelist, that will just come with myself and Maya. And then I'm already seeing some names that I recognize as our kind of returning socialers, but we'd also like to know, is this your first social that you've attended with us? Is this your first May social, or is this your first potentially kind of journal prompt focused social? You're more of like a setup type person. So if you fit into any of those categories, we would love to see you in the chat, and welcome. And then, as always, be kind and courteous to yourself and others. No promotions or spam. Respect everyone's privacy. No hate speech or bullying. Limit repetitive product and accessory questions. Redirect customer care inquiries to our team. hello@siliconsonder.com. And then, as always, Sonder Socials are a tool to help elevate your emotional health through the power of community. But you are responsible for your own emotions, well-being, and decisions. And in the flurry of the chat, I do see quite a few kind of first-time journal prompters, which these, I think, socials are definitely a very different vibe than the setups. There is something truly vulnerable and I think magical about not only discussing kind of what I'll call like the answers to the prompt that you have, but I also feel like what's nice is to share kind of how you feel about it, how you approach it. There's kind of also that magic in the journey of how you come up with the answers or how you feel about it. And I do sometimes think with these deeper themes, those conversations become a little bit more magical. You get a little bit more different perspective, but I also feel like there's that definite sense of community, that there are people kind of having the same thoughts and feelings, going through something similar, that you can kind of just get that kind of kind of middle of the road support from it. So thank you everybody kind of for sharing for that. But with this one, it's definitely we are glad that you're here. We're glad that you've come as you are. You can work on as little or as much of this as you want. If you've already done some of these prompts, you can kind of rephrase it or repurpose it or reframe it to continue it. Or you can always just work on kind of a couple of the prompts. You don't have to work on the specific page that we're on. You can always jump back and forth. We're going to look at kind of additional ways of maybe answering and kind of approaching some of these prompts. So we are definitely in full-fledged month of May, which is trust. And then for me in particular, my kind of trust journey is certainly on the self-trust mode. I have certainly kind of mastered what I considered an art of delegation. So I feel like trust is what it is. I have my little like circles of people and their access to me, and they have different levels of trust, accounted for them. But I'm really trying to kind of turn that and focus on self-trust because I've had some certain changes that have kind of impacted my confidence and really my trust in myself, not only just on a confidence scale, but a knowledge scale. And so this particular quote is what really resonated with me. And I think you'll see that as a theme true, which is that you don't have to be an expert. No one is expecting you to be an expert in this particular situation. I am not an expert in these areas either. All we need to do is show up and be you. So that's another one of these situations that I feel like is really applicable to just the journal prompts in general. You don't have to be the expert. You don't have to have the right answer. There are no right or wrong answers. You just need to show up. We need to give it the good old college try and we'll be here to support each other along the way as we kind of tackle these things. So our agenda is we've got a really fun opening activity just to get kind of what I love about it is these kind of squishy thoughts, feelings associated with the theme. And we're going to add some iconography to it, which I think is always great. And I think it's got a good spring theme. And then it does say we're going to do the gratitude log and then the letter, but we're going to switch that. We're going to sandwich that letter in the middle because it's certainly going to be a little bit maybe rougher for some. It was certainly a little bit rougher for me, so that I can then end on a little bit of the higher note with the gratitude log. So that's what we're going to work on. So for this opening activity, it's going to be a trust garden. So go ahead and find a blank notes page or a scribble pad or kind of your thoughts. You can also use that small scratch pad on the side because we're going to be drawing our own little trust garden. And so the way we're going to start it is kind of a foundational thing, which you're going to start at the bottom with kind of the base of trust. And so that'll be kind of your circle or your kind of soil. And these are going to be kind of your ideas and thoughts, be it words, affirmations, descriptions on what represents the foundation of trust. And you will sprinkle that into your soil. And then you have your seeds of trust. So these will be those kind of smaller ovals or circles that are going to be the seeds of trust that you're going to start kind of your planting. And again, these are going to be what you think of as, where does trust start? Where does it begin? What is its kind of smallest form? And then you're going to move into the actual growing portion of it, which is going to be the sprouting, the growing, or the intertwining of the trusts. And these are going to essentially, as you get taller, as you start experiencing more, what does trust start to look like? What you'll see the example on the next couple of pages and another way of looking at it. And then at the end of those kind of stems or shoots, you're going to have kind of the full blooming trust. And these are going to be the kind of fruits of what you do when you trust. And so essentially, again, you're going to be able to add in details to this trust garden. You can always come back to it, add more. You can include more leaves. Maybe it's different flowers. Maybe it's different types of flowers. Or again, some of those small other portions that would come to like the greater use of the garden. So that'd be good garden tools. That could be a couple other things. But essentially, we just want the creativity to flow. And it's more of kind of your interpretation of trust and how it can bloom and how it can thrive and how it can impact kind of your garden or your kind of fulfillment as you go and look out in the spring. So here's my cute little, it's a very small garden because, we live in an apartment, so we don't have a big old swatch of land. But this is where I started kind of with my foundation. I had my seeds off to the side and how it builds into the different phases. But other things you can include with this is just coming back to what are your thoughts and interpretations of trust? How do you describe it? What words do you use? So I'm one of those, as I certainly like to pick ideas and thoughts and put them in, again, similar color to the type of color scheme that I'm doing. What tools or help do you need? Are there weeds there? What do they potentially represent? Are those the distractions? Are those things that would take away from it? And then another thought is, what if your plant needs something different? So maybe you have a different plant that represents, your friend circle, or a different plant that represents the family circle, or like even a professional circle. What we know that each of those things might have a different view of trust. They may have a different impact of trust. So you can build different foundations based on that. And then sometimes it's also, do you need a fence to create a boundary? Or do you need those cute little support staffs for if, you had a potentially broken trust and so you're trying to rebuild that stem and it needs just a little bit more extra support? And what is that extra support and what would that look like? And then we always, anytime we do a garden kind of theme, I feel like it's the addition of the compost heap for things that kind of no longer serve you. And it's not that they're bad and they need to be removed and you got to get rid of them. Maybe it's things that it can just needs to be pulled and removed from that, go and spend, time with it. Cause then you can always bring back, that's what's nice about the compost heap is that you throw some of those discards or some of those unwanted things in there. It can sit and marinate and then it builds into something a little bit more usable, so fertilizer-y, and then maybe you bring it back. Especially kind of, again, all of this under the theme of trust. So I know it sounds like a lot, certainly a lot to start first thing in the morning, but I think, again, this is a good exercise that you can always kind of come back to and build into your garden. And the visual, I think, is also really nice. But we are on a blank piece of paper and we are looking at kind of our trust garden and how each of those kind of components of trust, how do they start? What's the baseline for it? What you need to cultivate trust and what type of things there? Because a lot of the theme that I have is that with every garden, you can add all of these factors, but it's going to take a little bit of time. And so time is going to kind of go there. It's going to look a little bit different. For me, it's always connection. Those are kind of key defining things for me in trust, and still with the kind of honesty and being genuine, but also, it becomes a little bit situational and opportunities and who gets certain components of that trust. Same thing with, you can also think of as you compile it into a bouquet, who would you then present that to, as another kind of foundation for. So let us know in the chat if you get a little bit hung up, but we would love to hear what are the things that you would include in your trust garden, and certainly your other ideas on how to make trust blossom and thrive. And we'll see you soon. Okay, so I know that that is certainly a nice prompt to start on, and it is certainly something that you can continue to come back to and revisit, especially throughout the not only rest of the week, but the rest of the month. And I think you can also kind of make some modifications to it as well. Maybe it's not a full garden, maybe it's more of like you have your vase and it's more of a little bit of a bouquet. But I think it's still just kind of that gist of how do you start, how do you cultivate, and how can you then bring in some of these pieces. And I also think it's a nice way to continue to come back and revisit kind of the core thoughts you have on what trust kind of means to you, what it looks like, and how those pieces fit together. So we are going to head and move to the next page, but just because we've kind of moved through all of these, there's going to be a little less kind of talking on camera by myself, quite a bit of music just to sit and let you kind of work on a lot of these and give you time to kind of work on that. So you can always jump back and forth between the different prompts, especially if you've already done some of these. Lori, I feel yeah, it's certainly a little bit early in the morning to tackle some of these. But we will be able to kind of work as we go. And a lot of it is, as Maya did point out, you can always, the YouTube recording of this, it is recorded. It'll be up probably early next week. And you can always come back and revisit it, especially kind of music or just work on it. But I think it's another one of those that you can kind of maybe add a new bloom or a new blossom to it as you go. So we are now going to turn to page 15, which is that trust letter. And so there's, you can absolutely answer it the way it is listed here. And then just a couple of the reminders of one that I feel like I've had to use quite recently is don't force what doesn't flow. You're allowed to take space and revisit things later. But I did see kind of in the app that this was certainly one that people were definitely finding really difficult. And a lot of it is not only just the concept of what the question is potentially asking, but I do find that the larger the blank space, the trickier it is to just kind of start working with these. So not only what I would suggest and challenge is that you just kind of take a deep breath, dive right in and just write. If you don't want to write directly in the journal, because we know that you can absolutely break away from perfection. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can have all of the spelling errors, all of the mark throughs and all those things. But if that is certainly something that you just don't want to be kind of worried about as you kind of tackle this, you can definitely grab some of that extra paper, an extra notepad just to kind of start formulating some of those ideas and then transfer it over. You can always do that. But we at least definitely want you to try it. And if you don't quite speak to you this way, we've got some other ways that you can kind of look at this question. So the first thing is set mental boundaries for yourself. That is something that I always have to remind myself here, because I will say that this prompt hits a lot of nerves for me, and not in what I would consider the productive way. Really, they just kind of make me a little angry, and that's okay. I'm okay with that, but it also means I may limit, what I want to explore, because I don't want to continue to dwell and be angry, because I feel like these are those kind of questions that keep me up at night, or when it's quiet and there's nothing else to think about. These are those kind of wonderful things that my brain switches to and is like, let's think about this. And then you're up for hours and it just kind of changes your mood. But the original prompt is write a letter to someone who broke or nearly broke your trust. What would you want to say to them? Kind of write openly and freely. For me, like I said, that one was a little bit tricky. So I have made some changes, and I'm actually going to write a letter to myself when I broke my trust. How have I forgiven myself, and what has moved me forward? Because while I'm a big advocate of, things happen, life happens, but what can we learn from it, and what can we take forward, either in that form of a lessons learned or some sort of actionable item? So I don't want to just kind of dwell. So like I said, I rewrote that prompt. So I'm again writing a letter to myself when I broke my trust, and how I've forgiven myself and what has moved me forward. Because while the other people make me angry, I think it all comes back to I'm a little bit more angry or disappointed in myself regarding the situation, because I think it all comes down to I should have known better. A couple other ways you can tackle this certainly is to make a T-chart. So if I saw that someone has more than maybe one person that's broken their trust, maybe you want to treat it a little bit more of like the T-chart where on one side, what breaks your trust on one side. So maybe those are actions or excuse me, things that kind of break your trust. You know, for me, I don't like being lied to. I don't care if it may not be the answer you want me to have or like a no, so to speak. I just don't want to be lied to. So it's more like if I'm, you know, if the answer is not what you think it to be, that's one of those. So and then on the other side, what you forgive or learn on the other side. So it's more if, you know, if someone lies to you, how do you handle it? How do you move forward? Another kind of version for this is to write a letter to a younger or older version of yourself to kind of prepare or help acknowledge how to handle trust. So maybe it's not a specific person or a specific event or a specific nature. It's more of, you know, you've had those kind of almost like, you know, small cuts. You know, it's not, it's more of the like what is it, death by a thousand cuts. So maybe you've had a couple smaller incidents of where trust was, you know, not necessarily broken but fractured. And so you can kind of write to your old younger self of, you know, honestly, a, you know, what you've learned or kind of what you can learn or what it really means at this grand scheme of things. And then, or you could do it to an older self of how can you prepare, acknowledge how you handled it or how you want to handle it or how you can kind of go internally. It's like, what tools do I need so that when my trust is broken, how can I kind of rebound or restructure or fix or forgive? And then I feel like what we always love is like, you know, you can write that letter to you from your pet as just kind of that confidence, a little bit confidence booster, what they've kind of seen as kind of someone that you can project some of the emotions on and see it from kind of an outside perspective. Or even, you know, maybe it's your pet that's kind of broken some of your trust. I feel like in those situations, my pets have certainly let me down, but in the best way possible. But then I always feel like when it comes to these, what I would consider, you know, you feel like you kind of are buried in a little bit of a negative answer because it is tough. You know, having someone break or nearly break your trust is certainly one of those feelings that hits everybody in very different ways, but it usually hits a lot of people pretty hard. Is that you always should include a way to reflect on how you can move forward or potentially rebuild that trust or forgive that, or again, maybe it isn't a forgive, maybe it's a forgive but a not forget. But I always feel like it's let's try to find somewhat a little bit of that very very glimmer, small glimmer of, you know, light in the darkness, so that we can turn it into something productive and a little bit more actionable. And so that's why me in particular, I did change the prompt a little bit because I still wanted to find something beneficial, something a little bit more optimistic, something that I couldn't quite dwell on beating myself up about, but still trying to find some of those paths forward, the lessons learned. What can we make this to be actionable? Because this shouldn't just be an opportunity to just kind of throw it all out there and really make yourself feel bad. It should be, this has happened, but here's how we can put all these pieces together. Here's how we can rebuild some of those things and move forward. So let us know maybe who you wrote your letter to, or maybe more the feelings and thoughts, if you want, of kind of how this has like either, you know, stopped you in your tracks from kind of easily kind of working on this prompt, or, you know, kind of the thoughts and feelings on the experience of the prompt. We would certainly love to hear that. I'm going to play quite some music and then I will check back in and we'll see you soon. Just a quick check in with everybody. Thank you for those that are sharing in the chat. Do not feel like you need to, but we certainly, I think what's really powerful of these type of exercises is you realize kind of what you thought to be kind of the fundamental cause or the fundamental situation. And then you realize kind of some of the either cascading impacts or other things that it impacts. You know, for example, in one of the situations, it wasn't, you know, the broke trust is usually what triggered, but it actually had a bigger impact on confidence or self-confidence, kind of those self-trusts. So I think even though these can be a little dark, a little sad, a little hard to look at, I think it's always sometimes to see some more of those cause and effect situations of how it can impact, but also then what kind of areas you can focus on. And again, it helps you kind of narrow down at least some of the responsibility, so to speak. You know, I feel like so much of these situations are a lot of things that we can't control, but sometimes that's the hardest part of acknowledging what is in our control and what isn't in our control. And so being able to then kind of find some of those key pieces that we can then move forward with. So again, thank you everybody for sharing. I know it is a little bit of a rough way to start a morning, but always again, take a big deep breath. Sometimes it is just releasing it into the universe, putting it down on paper to get it out of your head and out of the space that it's taking up in there and put it in there so that you can then kind of move forward. So I'm going to give you a little bit more time to keep working on this, but we are absolutely here to support you. And it's amazing that you've set aside time for today to kind of tackle some of these deeper issues, but that is again kind of what these prompts are for as we embrace this particular month. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. I love the exploration that we can all do on some of these deeper topics. And obviously, everyone has kind of had their own journey, their own travel in this. And I do think Victoria summed it all up really well with you. All will heal from the trust broken. It may take years, it may take time, but sometimes just the initial start is acknowledging that this situation transpired and how we can turn it into some of those productive ways forward. And that takes time, that takes being in a certain type of headspace, that just takes experience. But the fact that we do have the opportunity within this wonderful space to just sit and kind of stare at these, very much kind of one-on-one, so to speak, it is there, it is right in front of you, and the opportunity to sit and do this. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And so now we're going to certainly shift gears, but obviously I don't like to end a social on a little bit of a darker note. So now we're going to shift to the gratitude log, which I feel like these are always like a great complement to each other with these type of socials, that we've got kind of the deeper prompt, but we're going to kind of somehow spin it and end on a little bit of the higher note. So certainly please join us on page 13 so we can find a way to kind of counterbalance those thoughts, feelings, and emotion that came up during the letter with ways that we can kind of show gratitude. And so the gratitude log is certainly a staple kind of that we use in various different versions. So you can absolutely treat it as just that, something that you showed gratitude or something that you were grateful for that day. Or we have a couple other different versions. So me in particular, the blank page really intimidates me at times. I always like to kind of have an answer and then kind of write my own description of it. So what I have done with the gratitude journal or the gratitude log in the past is I've actually picked a category. So I've randomly picked, these different kind of phrases, and then I've reflected on what I am grateful for in those things. So I've reflected on what I'm grateful about my courage, what I'm grateful about the things that I love. The trickier ones, or I am grateful for the mistakes that I've made and why. I am grateful for the disappointments. I am grateful for the memories. So this is kind of a structured way of doing it, kind of a little bit more on a journal prompt theme of you can reflect on how you're grateful for these type of different scenarios, and you pick a different one for each day. You can also, again, treat it as that kind of grateful log, which is for, the people, places, things, experiences. You can also use it kind of as a future log, things that you could be grateful that you're doing for now that can have an impact in the future. You can also use it as maybe a reflective for milestones, so things that you're grateful for the past, present, and again in the future, and what makes you grateful for those milestones. You can always replace grateful with the I love log. If you have a little bit of a hard time finding some of those roses or wins each week, maybe this is where you pick this is your rose log for the month. So you pick something that went well, the win, something that made you smile each day, so that you can celebrate those. So you have that wonderful bouquet of things that you're grateful for, or the wins that you had that you can then add to your trust garden. But you can also embrace the theme of trust. And so instead of the things that you're grateful for, maybe it's how did I show trust today? Or what did trust look like today? Or who did I give trust to today? And that could be everything from, I trusted a friend or a spouse or someone to, do something for me, and I relied on them to do it, kind of a delegation thing. Or again, something that, did you trust yourself? Did you put something off, or those type of things, as a way to kind of embrace the theme and rephrase it. So you can ask yourself those questions on a daily basis. I have become a fan of the kind of, again, I like an answer and then being able to reflect on it. So they have some really great spin the wheel type apps, and you can have positively generated words for the prompts. So there are a couple ones that you can kind of add. You can get them for free, and it gives you just a spin on randomly that type of word, or same thing with this Look and Sonder generated prompts. Maybe this is more of like that reflective piece there. Or it can be a kind of a plan for gratitude. How do you want to show gratitude that day instead of like a log? I feel like playlists are always super fun. They certainly add a certain, vibe to certain things. So maybe it's a trust playlist, or you can always include maybe more of a theme. So maybe it's a seasonal log if you're still wanting to connect with play, or some of the other kind of themes that we've had in the past, be a connection, or even come up with a different theme. Or if you have a particular word of the year, maybe this is an opportunity to come back before we hit kind of our mid-year mark as a way to check in with your word of the year. So how did you embrace your word of the year log? But as always, we would love to hear if you've repurposed this gratitude log before, or if there are things that you want to revisit. Are you absolutely still in that mindset of tracking the things that you're grateful for? Or do you have other repurposing ideas? We would love to see you in the chat, and we'll see you soon. Thank you everyone for sharing. I always, like I said, like to end on a little bit more, happier, more positive notes. So I think this again is a great duality to those exercises. But I loved seeing how you all utilize your gratitude log. Certainly a way to kind of celebrate the good each and every day, and certainly treated that. And just because it is referred to as a log, I think it was gotta find it. Jennifer, that pointed out that you don't actually have to fill it out every single day. Maybe it's something that you have, a rough day and you can come back and fill out as many things as you can. Or maybe it's where you sit and fill out all of the things that you're grateful for as another way to do it. So just because it is called a certain thing doesn't mean you need to use it that way. So being able to kind of break away from the thought of a log or a tracker, those type of things. And it is something that definitely comes up a lot. So certainly I would love to see if you repurpose these type of things. There's certainly a way to tailor it for what you need when you need it in that type of focus. But that does reach to the end. Can you believe it? It goes by so quickly. So again, thank you everyone for diving a little bit deeper into the theme of trust and tackling maybe two of those pages that you may not have been able to, pluck up some of the courage to knock it out on your own. But we're so glad you set aside that time today to work on it. And you can always come back and revisit not only the social, but look for more inspiration and come back and work at these throughout the entire month. And then as always, we do have the Elevate Planner that is out that if you want to kind of continue another tool there, we do still have the sticker subscriptions, not only on the monthly side to add kind of the color and theme of that particular month, but then the kind of greater one. And then as always, Maya will include some of the links to the chat, but we would certainly love to hear your feedback around what type of socials you want to see, when you want to see them. So if you do include some of those scheduling things, make sure that you include your time zone so that we know. And then we'll also include that YouTube link in the chat, just so you can always bookmark that. There won't be the chat, but you'll have the facilitator and the things just so you can set aside some of that time there. But again, thank you everybody for joining us. We're so glad you took time to dive a little bit deeper. And I know, as Maya pointed out, we do have a weekly setup later today. Jennifer O is going to be running that. I will be the stage manager for that. But again, thank you everybody for your open and honest reflection, especially when it comes to the tougher theme of trust, as well as writing a letter to someone that potentially broke your trust. But we would love to continue the conversation in the app, and we hope to see you at a future event. Thank you everybody for joining us, and we will see you another time. Have a great day, a great rest of your weekend, and let's continue to work on trust this month. And so I trust that I hope to see you again. Thank you. Bye.
Grab the matches, start a fire, throw the memories in the flames, it's behind us. See the gold in the red, new horizons. Let it burn, let it burn. So run for the hills, baby, don't look back when you leave. There's a train headed west, move along, you got somewhere. Start a fire, throw the memories in the flames.